Want to support the channel? Don't want to spend any money? Hey, follow me on my socials or just even click subscribe. It really helps me out. Seriously.
Dragon Ball, horror, kaiju, and more. Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hello there, collectors. It's going to be Steven here. As you know, it's in the title of my channel. Not like there's really going to be anybody else. Today we have a review of another SH Monster Arts. Happy holiday season to you. Hot off the heels of the North American release of the movie, we have a review of the SH Monster Arts Godzilla 2023 Godzilla Minus One. This is monumental because this is going to be one of the times where Toho pushed really, really hard. They didn't push it through Fathom Events. They didn't push it through some small independent distributor in the US. They took the reins and they pushed it in North America, and they're really pushing for it's the 69th anniversary, but they're billing it under the 7th anniversary of Godzilla. And here we are with something with a US retail of $140. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about because the big argument is going to be quality. If you get paid $14 an hour, I want to really put this in a way that you can conceptualize this. Is this going to be worth, let's assume we're not including taxes, 10 hours of your labor? Let's take a look to see whether or not it's going to be worth adding into your collection. Let's go ahead and knock out the negatives of this figure when it comes to the sculpt and the paint right off the top, and then we will talk about the positives, because interestingly enough, there's a bit of an oxymoron going on here. When we do the 360 spin view of Godzilla from just a little bit of a distance away, we're going to say it's going to be about 1.5 feet. Again, it's going to be on camera, so when you have things in hand, it'll look a bit different. We do have a few issues that, I mean, at this point, it's unacceptable, and I'm beating a dead horse, but c'est la vie. The eyes. It's not just mine. There are others. You can hop on my Discord server. We've posted a few different pictures. Even a few people who have been in there, myself included, have posted issues with the eyes. So it's not even necessarily that the eyes are pointing in different directions, which that has been an issue. They're not centered or symmetrical. The issue seems to be with some units that the calibration for the machine, or however they did it, for pressing the decals or whatever they are for the eyes on, was not correct, because it seems that there's a running issue with the eyes not being placed correctly. So, for example, I've seen a few situations where the right eye is actually on the figure but lower on the sculpt. So, like for mine, it's not on the sculpt. It's slightly on his cheek a little bit, and I've seen a few that are like that as well. Why? Why are we here more than a decade into the line and we're still having issues with the eyes and where they're placed? Especially when we have the Marvel figures and the DC figures and even the non-suited Kamen Rider figures, the human forms, where admittedly is a screen printing for them accurate, the dot matrix printing, not exactly. However, it's a matter of accuracy, not misalignment. Why are we doing this? Next up, the teeth. Colgate strips. This is an ongoing issue that we've been having in the line, and I'm not quite understanding why they are doing this. Okay, some of the teeth are individually painted, arguably well or not, I'll leave that back to you, but some of the teeth just have straightforward strips. Now here's where we get to the oxymoron, because the paint on the figure in some areas is rather thick and heavy-handed when it comes to the dry brushing. So it does have dry brushing to bring out those details, which is good that it has it, but it is very thick, like I just said. It's heavy-handed, and it doesn't look good. It's just like brown. It's just kind of like someone picked up mud on a brush and just slapped it on the figure. When it comes to the scar on his face, it's very subtle. Like yours truly, it's not all that intense. But when you have others, there's just a solid brown line for the eyebrow. There's no subtlety there. And that's where it comes in, because yes, we do have the dry brushing, which makes it look really, really noticeable for the sculpted details, but there is no subtlety. So yes, they did work to really make the details pop and so forth, but there's no transition. There's no art of making sure that this really blends in well. It's very much so like going into a dark room, flipping on the light switch, and then quickly turning it off so this way you can see everything, and then we go into 0. Actually, I'm saying we're going into minus. See what I did there? But what I will say is that the sculpted detail is really fantastic. This obviously is going to look on model because they did have access to the CGI files. But something I am going to come back to later, they did have Yuji Sakai step in to help out with some of the details for the figure. I'm assuming that this is going to help translate it over into a 6-inch scale. But at this point, if Yuji Sakai is going to be consulted and brought in, even though this is his little brainchild, the line, then at this point, if that's going to bump up the price, maybe he needs to stop. Overall, the figure, it looks fine, but when we factor in price, I mean, this is just kind of unacceptable at this point. Oh, but you really thought we were done with sculpt and paint? No. Just by sheer oddity, I happened to come across 2 minus Goji figures. And with that, a good pal of mine, Boats Can Fly, you can check him out at the Twitter handle on the screen or in the description if you want to click the link. He wanted to pick the other one up, but he did want me to send him some in-hand pictures so this way he could figure out what paint he needed to buy to fix his up. And he agreed for me to do side-by-side pictures with mine and his so you can see some differences between production units. And wow, there are some differences between different sections. You can see that some areas on mine or his definitely appear to be a bit more heavy-handed. And of course, we're going to take a look at the eyes on his and the teeth as well, just to see how different they are. So when I talk about subtlety and when I talk about blending and shading and fading and all of that fun stuff, well, I guess one may say I definitely put my money where my mouth is, or he put his money. You get what I'm trying to say. And of course, here's going to be that final shot with the eyes and the teeth. Wall-eyed. Great. Okay, so this... There's a lot of good intentions, I believe, here for minus Goji, but I will say that there's... He moves well, but... Okay. Mouth opens and closes, and I'm actually going to show you a neat feature. Actually has to do with the webbing in his mouth. I guess the meaty bits here opens and closes basically on a hinge. I think actually a ball joint, but because of how it's constructed, it's essentially in a hinge. But you may be familiar with sort of like the Monsterverse, how it has the meaty bits here by the cheek. If you have the Hammond collection figures from Jurassic Park / World, they kind of move in and close. This does the same thing. Now, I will note in my unboxing, I couldn't move the mouth. I couldn't move the jaw. It was just stuck. And I think a similar thing with some of the Monster Hunter MonsterArts was going on, where if you noticed when we're going over the sculpt and the paint, he has these 2 scales, scutes, whatever, that they're kind of jutting out. If you move the head in a specific direction, it kind of does block the articulation a little bit. So I think that may affect the clearance. So it's just something to keep in mind. But the head plugs into the neck on a ball joint. And here's kind of where we get a little weird. So I'll just talk about everything. Head into this section of the neck on a ball joint, and then that into this section on a ball joint, and then that into this section on a ball joint. So we have some good movement. If we look down, we can get about that much movement. So he can look straight down. He can look at his toes. Yummy. And then, as we look left and right, we can pop the head off. That is something that initially that didn't happen until I forced the joint a little bit and the head popped off because of this section that I want to talk about. Getting him to look up. This is basically a gimmick. So let's hold this section in place best I can. So he can look up about that far, getting Godzilla in a neutral pose. So let's readjust this part here. He can look up about that far. These 3 dorsal plates on this sculpt move. They sort of swivel back and forth. Now, when you adjust this part for the full range of movement, at the first point that they move, that far. So for editing purposes, I'm going to go ahead and put these 2 side by side. Is there that much of a difference? Go ahead and make the decision for yourself. I won't make it for you. Now that we snap back to the actual live video here, here's what's going on. If you move this too far, the first time, at least in my experience, they will sort of get to that point. But then they pop out. And these are little. So first, if you have a carpet monster, bye-bye. They're gone. It seems like the little spot with 2, you can see it here. with the two branches, if you will, if this were like a tree, or the two spots with a leaf, they face the back. No, they face the front, I think it is. But they're very easy to pop out. So if that's going to be the case and it falls like on your carpet or your rug or whatever, then goodbye. And good luck to get them to stay in place. Basically, they won't now. I've seen some people just say, whatever, and they just glue it in place now. So is it worth the frustration? I don't think so. I don't think the range of movement is that much different, but I guess it's worth the effort. But I don't understand why they would put something experimental like that on a flagship figure, if you will, if that makes sense. Anyway, that is the neck articulation. He can pretty much look straight up. Your mileage may vary on the success. The arms are going to be on ball joints. I popped this one off. It is pretty much a double axis barbell style joint, so he can spin his arms around pretty much all the way, just like so. No, I'm not really having issues unless I crank this one. We do have a bicep swivel, which the whole arm section is just going to be on continuous ball joints, so we can get some rocking motion. This is something that I didn't catch until it was really in hand, so I'm going to show you here. This section of the bicep where he's got like the muscle here, that breaks on down into another section that is on a ball joint as well. So we get more movement there. So that's pretty much just going to be his elbow. And then this section is the forearm is basically going to be in a ball joint as well. That extends, however, into here, and that's where the ball joint is going to be. I saw a couple of reports of that breaking. The ball joint is really small, so just be careful of that. The wrists are going to be on ball joints as well. This one is really tight, so just for crazy movement purposes, I'm only moving this around. It does wiggle, basically. The hand pose is just kind of awkward, I think, more reminiscent of Heisei than I think the minus Goji design, so make of it what you will. Now, we do have an ab crunch that is a ball joint and a waist joint that is a ball joint. So this is really great movement. He can twist and turn, which is pretty much what this Godzilla is known for. And then we have sort of this floating sleeve, which is for gaps, which is nice. I mean, it does help. It doesn't really get in the way of the articulation. I suppose that if you don't like things to not be lined up correctly, then this could present a bit of an issue, but it's fine. I mean, yeah, Godzilla can sort of crouch down, and if you saw the movie, you know that there's an iconic scene of him looking sort of straight ahead and he's roaring, which is great. So this helps to recreate that. Hips, ball joint, which we have some nice movement there. Just remember that it's a barbell style, so they can move down and they can be pushed up a little bit, as you're seeing here. And then a ball joint where it plugs into the thigh, so we get great movement. So just look at that. That's really cool. He can kick that far forward and that far back. For the knee, we do have basically ball joints, double, so that's great. For the foot, mine are tight. As they pop off, it's really weird because they were tight there. Okay, so we get nice movement forward and back, ankle rockers for a little bit, and then my favorite feature, I've seen people say they don't go down, but we have ball jointed toes. Why did the foot pop off? Anyway, we have ball jointed toes, and they are barbell style as well. They do go down, but not that much, but they can go up. You can splay his toes, and don't get too excited there, kids. Okay? All right. Tail. I'm going to keep his foot off. I think I may need to heat that up to put that back on. The tail is the best Godzilla tail we've had in the line so far. I popped that off before. I think you saw that in the unboxing. Yeah, so the way that this works is, again, barbell style joints all throughout. You can actually sort of like shift his tail down. You can see that me doing that, which is really cool. And that's where the copyright information is going to be, the trademark stuff. So just kind of look at that. We can get his tail. Let me see if I can do it again. To like curve all the way down. Tail's really neat. That's the whole point. And it goes all the way like up to, where is it at? This section right here. This has gone on long enough. The articulation is great. I really like it. It's just those dorsal plates up there, which is really confusing. And this section has gone on long enough. So, there's accessories, I guess. Oh, you thought it came with accessories. Well, it doesn't. None. So, size comparison time. You can see he's pretty much going to be your average-ish on the... No, he's kind of on the bigger end of your 6-inch scale Godzilla. It's a shame that he doesn't come with any accessories. There are plenty of options that are available, but we'll cover that actually in the end, the rant section, if you will, of this video. Yeah. So, buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. I kind of topped it off at the end of my sculpt and paint section. The price, that's the big thing. If we remove the price factor from this, if you were to just say, hey, we're doing a minus Goji, we're doing this, congratulations, this is what we're going to be doing, this is the prototype, and you delivered this to me as a final product, I would critique it and say the paint is a little heavy-handed, there are some areas that really aren't painted, okay, correct these quality control issues, but if you were to hand this to me, I would enjoy it, this would be okay. If you were to tell me you are going to be paying $140 at US retail for this, go fly a kite. This is not a $140 figure. I think it would be very difficult to argue that this is worth $140. There's a whole other video that I'm going to be addressing this overall pricing issue because this is about 14,500 yen when it comes to Japanese retail. And the way that it used to be is that the old Bluefin would offer these at retail for the conversion rate at the time that it was announced. They're not doing that anymore. Back to my point, if this were to have been announced for about $100 or so, which would have been closer to what we should have been paying at the time, I would say wait for a deal at about $80. That may have been possible, but at this point, no, this is not a $140 figure. I can only see that the diehards would be willing to pick this up, sort of like yours truly, but nevertheless, here we are. New, popular Godzilla. Make of that what you will. However, we are going to go on into the last point, but the formal review is finished. And now comes the part that you knew was coming, because I did have to talk about this, especially with some of the other videos for the MonsterArts line that I've posted. Everyone here is relevant in one way or another. The rant section. I had to do it because it's all coming together now because I knew this would happen. If you feel like clicking off, go ahead, but I would say I'm going to make some points that I think you want to stick around for. Go ahead, leave the video running, listen to it like a podcast. Let me persuade you. I don't feel like Bandai's going to even pay attention to this because why would they? But you, the person who's making the decision whether or not they want to purchase, let me speak to you. Let me speak to you. There's no three fingers pointing back at me because I already made my decision. All right. Once again, I'm going to circle back to the point that I made in my Gamera Rebirth review. This figure is one of the best figures that they made in the line. It is amazing. All of the aspects that we know and love about the SH MonsterArts line are present, but it is also one of the worst because it is going to stain the line for all of the future releases, and this is going to be the standard that they will be held to. This figure is about $125, $130 US MSRP, and it knocked everything out of the park. If there is something that is in that caliber of release that fails, we can look to this to see exactly what went wrong and what they can do. And we get this. For Gamera Rebirth, they had the design team, the directors, everybody involved. It is a big, hulking figure with a lot of finer details, an immaculate sculpt based off of the model that they had with the skeleton for the design, a bunch of accessories, well articulated, the whole 9 yards. Godzilla here, same thing. Those who worked on the movie, the director, approval, Yuji Sakai, who he gave birth to the line essentially. This line would not be in existence if it weren't for him. And it's $140 or so at US MSRP. Admittedly, there is going to be more articulation, but look at the paint applications. Look at what holds the figure back. We talked about that in the review. And when I look at Gamera Rebirth over here, it looks so much better, and it feels like a more cohesive and just better package than what we have for minus Goji over here. I'm not sure exactly what went wrong. When I see these two side by side, I can't help but think to myself, this is the most significant package that I've had in the MonsterArts line that I've purchased in a while. It's rather disappointing when I see the great paint apps for the eyes, for the teeth. I see the nice gradients and shading that are found on this figure, and I see something that could be almost equally achievable here, and the ball is dropped. Now, Yuji Sakai did not work on this one, to my understanding, but he did there. Now, I probably know what you're going to say, at least some of you, metaphorically. Well, this is going to be a new, unique design, and they're not going to be reusing this, so they had to cut corners and did it. No spoilers, not counting Movie Monster Series A. But let's talk Gamera 1999 over here. The first one was a flop, and they did go back, and they did fix some things, which, okay, they may do that, but we're going to jump to Super 7 and incorporate that a bit as well in a minute. But with this one, we know that there is a heat ray and atomic blast, is some, you know what I'm talking about, variant that they more than likely will make with blue dorsal plates and a beam effect. They did that with the MonsterVerse Godzillas. They've done it with a few other Showa era. We know that it's a possibility. We know that that's actually something they're going to do because -1 was fantastic. So they are going to have reuse possibilities here. And if you saw the movie, there's some retooling involved. But battle damage, you at least saw from the trailers, there's one or more options that are possible. Also, other accessories are possible. There's boats, mines, planes, buildings, so forth. So, why get it wrong from the jump when you can do well? Why are these two over here? For emphasis, Super 7 worked with the director, had access to the CGI model, and admittedly, it's a render. We know how some Super 7 products have turned out. I've at least picked the poster boy for what they're capable of, but if they're able to achieve something that is equivalent to this, which it has been noted by the designer of the majority, I think all of the Ultimate Godzilla products, that they've pretty much been able to put all of the money that they have for the actual minus Goji Godzilla product into the quality of the figure. So if they're able to hit this or better, then there are going to be options that are going to be on the market, and Super 7's Ultimate minus Goji is going to be $85. If you pick it up now, you're going to have some pretty solid options available. And then here's the final nail in the coffin, which is the point. Okay, Super 7, you can say what you want. You can say that they're bad. For the most part, okay, they're not great. Haya. Obviously, we haven't heard a peep out of Haya. They just teased their first Heisei Godzilla. Say what you want about things in Discord servers. People are already saying that they're going to wait for the Haya release because Haya's been knocking it out of the park for $50 or so, and they just released, it's in China right now, their King Ghidorah, which is going to be their first large-scale kaiju figure, and it already absolutely thrashes what Tamashii Nations was able to do for their King Ghidorah. And I really don't want to hear anything about, oh, it was early access CGI out, because there are other companies who are able to do the same thing with early access stuff and pre-approved, and they've been able to do fantastic with that. Here's the point that I'm making. Tamashii Nations is no longer the only game in town. So, if you like this, that's fine. I always want to give power back to the customer. I want to give power back to the person who is making the purchase to make sure you're able to get the most out of your buck. That is the point of my reviews. I'm giving you the information to make an informed decision. I don't want you going in blind for any purchase. I'm not going to throw anything over your face so this way you go, oh, I didn't know about that. When you come to watch my reviews, that is what I want to give you. But I do want to make you aware that, based on the information that is on the market today, Tamashii Nations, for everything that happened with this figure, they have done that, and even just before that, made a figure that was significantly better than what they've done here. And, considering reuse, they've been able to knock it out of the park and make it so much better with even more accessories. There is direct competition that will be coming out later, more affordable, with equal accessories. I don't consider an open head or open mouth head more accessories. And there are already folks who are talking about a threat to the throne, if you will, since we're going to talk about MonsterVerse. I think that's an apt comparison. A threat to the throne. If they step into the game, this may very well get thrashed with more than acceptable faults like articulation and so forth, that they don't even need access to the CGI files. looking at you, Godzilla 1991, and they can probably do a better job. If you're not sold on this, wait. You have access to possibly better.